Hey guys, it's Lucky Ghost, and today I'll be covering a two-handed Stamina Necromancer build. This build is capable of doing all content in the game. It's a build that's friendly towards beginners, but that just happens to be the case. It's actually built to do endgame content. 99% of the time when I'm using this build, I am running around with Crags, New Moon Acolyte on the body, and Perfected Locuestes on the feet and the weapon, which is a two-handed battle axe, and then my Maelstrom bow on the back bar. Acceptable substitutes for New Moon and Locuestes could be Zogvin or Deadly. Those are both great sets for the Necromancer right now as well. Until you're able to get a Maelstrom bow, you could substitute this with a Locuestes bow would be fine, or a Zogvin bow, whatever the set you're using here. You could just backbar that same bow until you're able to farm something like a VDSA bow or a Maelstrom bow. As for the skills that this build is using, we'll be using Blighted Blast Bones, Brawler, Reverse Slice, Barb Trap, Detonating Siphon, and Pestilent Colossus on the front bar. On the back bar, we will be using Skeletal Archer, Endless Hail, a Flexibility, sometimes Reservation for the increased damage passive we get in Fighter's Guild, or more often than not, Vigor, and then Barb Trap again, and Detonating Siphon again. These three abilities we will not use most of the time. They're just there for their passives. Get 3% more damage, 3% more damage, 3%, and some other Necro passives are applying as well. So these are just there for the passives. All we're really using are the first two, which is what makes this build so easy. Okay, I just want to talk about real briefly some important passives that you should be aware of, so that you understand why this build works the way that it does. We're going to keep Skeletal Archer up all the time. And the reason we keep this up all the time is because of the passives that are applied to it. Let's see, where's it? Right here. While a Gravelord ability is active, your spell and physical pen are increased by 1500. So we account for this. We get to spend less points of our CP trying to get physical pen. We just keep our Skeletal Archer active and up all the time instead. On the front bar, one of the reasons we're rocking so many of these Gravelord abilities, besides the fact that they're amazing, is because of this here. Increase your critical strike chance against enemies under 25% by 10% for each. Right now we've got 30% increased chance at crit during execute. That's huge. Okay, and that pairs up really nicely with our Bloodthirsty Jewelry, right, which is increasing our damage by 30% to enemies under 25%, aka in execute. So higher chance to crit and more damage when we get into execute when you combine those items. As for the passives we're going to be grabbing for this build, you're going to get all of these passives. You want all of your two-handed passives, which allow you to cleave better and become much more efficient with your two-handed abilities. It's one of the reasons that two-handed weapons are so much easier to sustain than dual wield. These passives right here, balance, which reduces our cost, and battle rush, which increases our recovery 30%. Huge, huge, huge. We've got in here, we've got a couple of important, well, three very important abilities. You can use Wrecking Blow as your spammable. If you know you're just going to be fighting one single target for a while, swap that in. Reverse Slice is bae. This ability is amazing. It's one of my favorite abilities in the game, along with Brawler. But Reverse Slice is going to do execute damage, deals up to 300% more damage to enemies within with less than 50% health. So at 31% health or below, you'll start swapping Reverse Slice in your rotation instead of Brawler. you'll start spamming reverse slice. Okay. And the AoE, so the important thing about this is other enemies nearby take 78% of that damage. So you're executing the one you're hitting, and even if the others aren't in execute, they're taking 78% of that 300% increased damage you're doing. And the range that of affected targets is way bigger than you're expecting it to be. It's huge. It's just an amazing skill. Yeah. What do we got? We've got the bow. On the bow bar, as we discussed, got Endless Hail right here, Endless Hail. And we're picking up all the passives again. They're just all very useful. There's nothing that doesn't really explain itself in here. Hasty Retreat is a nice one, so always make sure you roll dodge when you're on your back bar, when you're running somewhere long. What's that green glowy under your feet? And it gives you 30% increase in move speed for a while. Armor, medium. For this build, you go 7 medium pieces of armor, and you pick up all of the medium passives. You're going to want to become a vampire if you're going to do this the way that I did it, and the way that most people are doing this build at endgame content right now. I think with sustain being what it is, this 10% stamina recovery is just too much. It's too good to pass up. And the drawback of it taking increased fire damage is really only a drawback in very few fire-heavy dungeons or trials. And in those cases, you can drop your vampirism down to level 2 by drinking this double Bloody Mara. Each time you drink it, it drops your vamp a level. Okay, so always have some of these on you when you're a vampire, so you can drop it on down at a moment's notice. It's very inexpensive, but any guild trader, it's not a problem. All right, next up, we'll go to guilds. The 2 important guilds to note are Fighters Guild and Undaunted. In the Fighters Guild, we're going to grab Ring of Preservation, Camouflaged Hunter. It makes a great passive. Makes a great ability to slot, because while slotted you get savagery. So it's not a bad one to have down here instead of barb trap, since you're never really using this barb trap. You could put that there, or you could replace this with it. Either way is fine. But it's a great option to throw down here. You can play with that. But the important things to note about the Fighters Guild, the reason we're using the Fighters Guild, besides the fact that the abilities we have on the bar are useful, this one here, the reason we use it on the front bar is that 10% increased critical damage that it gives for 18 seconds at a time. That's why we apply it every 18 seconds while we're in battle. But this passive right here, that's why we're using so many of these abilities in our flex spot. We throw Ring of Preservation there, not because it's particularly useful compared to other abilities, but because it gives us 3% more damage by having it slotted. But as far as which passives to get in here, go ahead and get these first 4. All very useful. Undaunted. Every class, every build is going to get these 2 passives and max them out. They're just too good. It's going to increase the amount of resources you get when you activate a synergy, and it's going to increase the max health, stamina, and magicka by 2% per armor type, which is why magicka characters run 5-1-1, so that they have all 3 for a total of 6%. We're going 7-0 because we just want damage, and it just so happens that we get more damage by focusing on medium. As for Alliance, we'll go ahead and use Echoing Vigor. We're going to we'll use this ability all the time, and same with Charging Maneuver. If you don't have Charging Maneuver, this ability is great. Every character should have it. It's so useful. 30% increase move speed, whether you're on your mount or not. It's just anytime you're not in the middle of battle in a dungeon, it's a great skill to have slotted for quicker spelunking. Echoing Vigor, this is the morph that heals you and your allies. Incredibly useful. In very select situations, you could go for the selfish morph, but more often than not, this is the one to go ahead and grab it and slot it here. Pretty much anytime you're not parsing, just throw this on there. It's too useful. Use it whenever you need a little bit more heals. Next up, our orc racials. So we are an orc, I do recommend an orc. It is currently, in current state of things, the best race for squeezing out every ounce of damage. Increases our max stamina, increases our max health, which allows us to pump more into stamina and other places. And then it increases our weapon damage. It's got a nice little passive that reduces the cost of sprint and increases our movement speed bonus. Last thing you want to make sure you get out of these skill trees is alchemy, and you want to get medicinal use level 3. This is essential for that end game content. Potions are huge. Potions are absolutely huge. So we'll go ahead and roll into potions, but what this does is medicinal use allows you to have your potions last 100% uptime, right? So typically when you use a potion, it'll last for a while and then the potion will run out, but the cooldown will still be going and you're not getting the benefit of the potion. You can't use the potion again until the cooldown's over, and then you can finally use it. Well, what medicinal use does is it makes the potion last as long as the cooldown so that you get 100% potion uptime. Speaking of potions, let's look at the one we'll be using. It's Essence of Weapon Power. This thing is beastly. It grants Major Brutality, which increases our weapon damage by 20%. It grants Major Savagery, which gives you 2100 weapon critical rating, and it restores 7,500 stamina while also granting Major Endurance, increasing our stamina recovery by 20% for the duration of the potion. So we're getting all three of those buffs 100% of the time with that medicinal use. That is huge. I mean, that's a flat 20% increase in damage, more crit, and more recovery. It's huge. Now, do note, it's very important, when you go to buy your Essence of Weapon Power, for whatever reason, there are multiple potions that can be crafted under the name Essence of Weapon Power, and they're not all equal. Some have a debuff on them that puts minor fracture on you, making you weaker. You don't want that. As a stamina toon, you never want to take more damage. You want this one. So do be wary when you're buying these potions from a guild trader. Make sure you're buying the right one. Okay. As for food, we will be using Lava Foot Soup and Sultrice. This stuff is great. The reason we're able to use this Parse food instead of a food that gives max health, right? Because this gives almost 5,000 stamina and almost 500 recovery. That's pretty huge. It's Parse food, but we're able to use it because in our attributes, we're putting 18 points health and 46 points into stamina. Those 18 points that we slide into health allow us to use that Parse food, and it works out fantastic for our sustain. Last but not least, we'll briefly go over rotation that you'll be using in battle, right? Where it matters most. You'll be dropping your Archer and your Endless Hell, and then you swap to the front bar and begin the rest of your rotation, which is Blast Bones, and then Brawler and Brawler. And you do that sequence 3 times. Then you do Blast Bones, Brawler, Barb Trap, and then you do a Blast Bones, and you swap back here. Start from the very beginning, which was drop these 2 abilities, then do this sequence times 3, where you go Blast Bones, Brawler, Brawler, Blast Bones, Brawler, Brawler, Blast Bones, Brawler, Brawler, right? And then on the 4th time, Blast Bones, Brawler, Barb Trap, and then Blast Bones, swap. Now you're wondering, what about Reverse Slice? And what about Detonating Siphon? Siphon, you're just going to apply anytime you can. Doesn't matter when, as long as you wait until after the previous Detonating Siphon explodes. So you'll use this ability, and let's say it blows up, and the next thing you're about to cast is Blast Bones. So cast Blast Bones. So you'll go Light Attack, Blast Bones, Siphon, Light Attack, and then into the next ability. You don't weave between the ability you're using and the Siphon. You just put Siphon right after the ability. It's kind of complicated. Basically, it's not on the global cooldown system, so you're able to cast it simultaneously with another ability. So it doesn't take a spot in your rotation. Therefore, it doesn't impact your rotation, which lets us keep the rotation static. Okay. So that's why you're able to do these two, this times 3, right? And then you go Blast Bones, Brawler, Barb Trap, Blast Bones, swap to the back. You're of course weaving in between every single ability, and you always do your light attacks on the front bar before swapping to the back. So you'll light attack, Blast Bones, light attack, swap, right? You do light attack, Blast Bones, light attack, swap, skeletal archery. Notice you don't light attack again before the skeletal archer. You light attack before the swap, and then cast skeletal archer, light attack, end the sale, swap, light attack, right? So you're just pushing the light attacks so that they're on the front bar where you do the most damage. And that's the rotation. As for reverse slice, all you do with reverse slice is once the mob you're attacking, it's 31% health or less, you use reverse slice where you used to be using Brawler. Okay. It's that simple. And if you're attacking a group of mobs and one of them hits 31%, you look at that sucker and you start using reverse slice on it, because when that mob is taking execute damage from reverse slice, all of the mobs, regardless of whether or not they're in execute, will be taking 78% of that execute damage. Is huge, which it basically allows you to start executing mobs that are at 100% because one of them is in execute. It's a great skill. That's why I love it. And your Pestilent Colossus, you know, once all of your dots are ticking, throw your Pestilent Colossus down. It's that simple. Pestilent Colossus does increase your damage by 30% for 8 seconds, you and your group. So just make sure all your dots are ticking before you throw it, and make sure they're going to be ticking for the next 8 seconds. So you want to reapply them, and right after you've applied them, throw your Colossus down so that all the dots tick through the duration of your Colossus. And it's really going to enhance your damage if you're paying attention to your rotation like that. Anyway, guys, if you have any other questions about this build, if there's anything that I missed, please don't hesitate to ask in the comments below. I'll make sure to answer all of them. And if I've missed anything major, I'll try to find a way to add it into the details of the video so that no questions go unanswered. Thanks, everyone. I'm Lucky Ghost. I stream ESO every single day. Don't hesitate to come into Twitch and ask me questions and find out more about this build. If you haven't already, please consider liking, subscribing, and hitting that bell.